So if it's real or fake, Golden Greek told us the giant goon Dick Hop, El Toro, the Grunt Brothers too. The wild Samoans got something crazy going. They're gonna be going after you. Wrestling tonight. Everything is bigger than life. Wrestling tonight. Rock and roll and wrestling tonight. Flying drop kick, suplex, mayor, stomping on the throne, pulling on.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wrestling Tonight. I am your humble hardcore host, Mad Dog Butch. With me, as always, none other than the Len Denton to my Tony Anthony.
Nice.
Brace Beemer.
Yeah. Nice dirty white boy reference. I like that.
Thank you. And hold on 1 second before I introduce. Let's remainice here for a second and go back to about close to 20 years ago. And
the new AT&T
here we go.
Cue ball. And you have anything else to say out there?
Congratulations on your championship.
Thank you, and I
Tune
will
back in.
actually defend it.
Good. Tune back
Unlike
in
the,
and
the former champion.
more quality calls. That's what we want. None of
Yep,
this trash
exactly.
stuff.
Just
Family
bring back more of
entertainment.
those calls.
You, your son, watching us.
Yep. No more smut TV on Lake Orion.
No.
That's what we do now.
Frank Range Controls, or you pull the plug tonight.
that's right, ladies and gentlemen. With us, our special guest this week, none other than the sometimes controversial, yet always entertaining Prozac 316, better known as Frank Williams Jr.
Golf clap.
Thank you very much.
Good to be back on the air with you, man.
Yeah, it's great. Good
Yeah,
to
it's
see you
been a
guys.
while.
It's an honor.
You too, it's been a long time. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch our show or listen to our show, but anytime we have a special guest on the show, we like to present them a gift for taking time out of their busy schedule and gracing us with their presence. So you are no exception. So you
Sweet gifts.
will be getting this High Spots Wrestling Network shoot interview of Roddy Piper.
Nice.
And also a grain of salt to take it with.
Okay. Wow.
No, I don't know. I've seen some Piper interviews, so I don't know. I don't know if I've seen that one or not, so I don't know if he's actually shooting in that one or not.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've seen some other ones where
Yeah, you're going to love that
where
one.
it's like
It's amazing.
still half kayfabe, half whatever.
Yeah,
But,
there's a little bit of that in there, but it's good.
I appreciate it.
No problem. Whenever we have a guest on here, pretty much the first question that we always ask is, how did you get into professional wrestling in the first place? And if there's any angle or, I mean, if you remember, like, the first time that you kind of got hooked on wrestling.
Yeah, sure. I would say that my first time that really hooked me was probably the Piper's Pit where he hit Jimmy Snuka with the coconut.
Oh, really?
And I used to watch wrestling before that, back with Bobo Brazil and all those guys. But it wasn't until like the 80s, I just happened to be turning on. I think it was like, it might have been at college, or I don't even remember, but it might have been a Toledo station, and they showed Piper's Pit, and I saw him hit Snuka with the coconut. And I was like, holy, everybody just went bonkers. Like, what the hell just happened there, And it just got me hooked. And then I started watching it, and we went to the first WrestleMania, which I saw it at the Flint IMA. What year was that? 85, maybe?
They showed it on closed circuit there.
Closed circuit.
Oh,
at
okay.
the Flint IMA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was 1985. Yeah.
I don't even remember that.
And it was packed.
Really?
It was packed there. And after that, I was kind of hooked. So
Okay.
that's how I got involved in it, pretty much. As for but I just watched it more from a fan point of view. I wasn't like an expert like you guys were with the history and the knowledge and the backyard wrestling like you guys did. It was more entertainment, and it was like more just being a fan, super fan of it. So that's how I got involved.
Now, as far as like the big time wrestling, the Sheik days, did you have any favorite wrestlers from that era? Or
I'm trying to think. It was so long ago. I was trying to think. There used to be a guy named, I think, was it Tex McKenzie?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd always get beat up, and he'd come back at the end.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that's
okay.
how I kind of.
Yeah, he was the typical baby face.
And then the Sheik blew the fire, and I'm trying to think. It's Bobo Brazil, some guy named Purple. I'm trying to think.
Pompero Firpo.
Purple.
Oh yeah.
And I always wanted to go down to Cobo. They had those matches. I don't know
Yeah.
if it was and Windsor and all that. And Fat George Cannon was down there. And,
Right.
but I never got it really. I'm trying to think if I ever got down there as a kid or not. I didn't. But as later on, in the 80s, I started going down there more with you guys and watching WrestleMania and things like that. And I got hooked once it took off, especially more in the 90s. I watched it in the 80s pretty good, but when WCW and WWF had the wars, when it took off, that's when I really got addicted to it.
So was Piper? I mean, was he kind of the main reason that you watched it? And
Yeah, I would. He worked the mic. I would, and just the things he did in the kind of the areas they went, which were I used to kind of think a little bit taboo, that most, like maybe TBS wasn't doing those type of things, like with Flair and those guys. Piper kind of pushed the envelope a little bit. I think then they probably brought him into the reins a little bit later with McMahon, but they were doing some pretty controversial things, and not that he was any, great wrestler or anything. It was just him working the mic and that,
So from like the newer era though, you eventually I know became a big Ric Flair fan. Is it safe to say that he is your favorite wrestler of all time?
Well, if back when we did the show, Jobber Hour, I might have said yes, but in the last 10 years, I think he's kind of disgraced himself a little bit. So needing the money that bad, so he's kind of gone down a couple notches. So I wouldn't put him at the best, but he'd be up there definitely. So no question, in the 80s, when I primarily watched WWF, I'd turn on TBS. It was all Ric Flair then, especially with the mic and what he did and the Four Horsemen. And
Oh, heck yeah.
that got me addicted to that real quick. So I was totally into that. So,
All right.
I mean,
So who's your favorite all time?
gosh,
Piper?
no, I wouldn't say Piper. I mean, working a mic, I'd say like Flair and Piper.
Luger.
A wrestler, yeah, Luger. How about Jesse Ventura?
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, Jesse was kind of like in the same boat as Piper as far as a great on the mic,
Yeah.
not so great in the ring.
Yeah.
Although some have called him a great ring technician in the
Yeah.
past.
We won't name
That-
names to that.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
to pick one though, I think it would be pretty hard because there's a lot of guys I like, a lot of
Yeah.
guys I followed. So I mean, I could say like Stone Cold when he was, but he wasn't a great wrestler, I don't think. So I mean, but there was just a lot of guys from an entertainment standpoint that it's hard to just pick one.
Yeah.
Like I said, I would have probably said Flair a long time ago, but he's gone down a little bit since what I consider the last 10, 15 years of watching him and seeing him.
No Hulkster on your list?
I think Hulkster. We'll hopefully we get more in depth about that tonight. But thinking about him, I mean, he's way down on my list as far as what he's done.
what about the heel turn in WCW though?
I think that was great. I mean, I don't know, where do you guys want to start as far as is this
Well,
a broad
well, I
discussion,
mean-
or you want me to start?
Well,
giving
I
some
mean, now
opinion?
we'll get the wrestling, just our fandom, our wrestling fandom, kind of out of the way first,
Yeah,
and then we'll get into.
I mean,
the,
I
the
think
shows.
that the whole WCW angle when they took Hogan and they made him a heel after McMahon went years and years with that stupid say your prayers and your vitamins and Hulk won every match. obviously the fans went bonkers for that. They just went nuts.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was so over. I mean, people were really into it.
How could they not do it? You know,
You know,
Making all
and
that cash.
and they just from there. I mean, WCW to me really kind of revolutionized wrestling because they took two top guys who would wrestle. They wouldn't have the squash matches anymore. And what they did on Monday Night Nitro for a year and a half when they were building it was quite amazing until their egos got involved in it and destroyed it pretty much. But I blame, you know, Bischoff, Hogan, Piper, you know, guys that, you know, when you could look back on at the time. I mean, they were
Nash and Hall.
yeah, those guys too. I mean, they were beating Monday Night Football in the
Yeah.
ratings.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that today.
Yeah, I know.
$1 billion business.
Right.
So, and on top of it, it wasn't like WCW was good. It made WWF good. They had to be good because McMahon was crapping his pants, thinking I could lose this thing. You know,
Yeah,
I
they
got
were getting
Monopoly,
their
and
butt
he was
handed
getting his
to
butt kicked. You know.
Yeah.
So that whole thing at that time, it just was probably the right time. It just peaked. You know.
Yeah.
We did the Jobber Hour at that time. It was like in the heyday for me. And I don't know, like I can't really speak to the last 10, 15 years because I've really stopped watching it because it's been so crappy. So,
Here,
back
here.
but back then, it was in its heyday, I think. Especially when we were doing the Jobber Hour coinciding with WCW and WWF Wars, the Monday Night Wars. So
Yeah.
we hit at the perfect spot. Then.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you would have been hard pressed with that. Excuse me, with that content that we had, what we were doing, that show. You know, it was just the perfect timing for that. Now, I think we've throughout the years, as far as our relationship goes, we kept it pretty kayfabe for people, even people that were involved in the shows that we're going to talk about. But we would all go to, like you mentioned, kind of the dying days of the NWA, years before the Monday Night War era. Right after Dusty stopped being Booker, and they were just throwing stuff at the walls. They were trying to emulate WWE at the time, WWF at the time. But so we went and saw a lot of shows at Kobo, WCW shows in the dying days of well, I mean, it wasn't the dying days yet. They got revamped in '95 or whatever, but
I'm trying to remember.
It was just like,
were they trying to come into Michigan, a new territory, like as far as live shows? I don't really remember. I think that's what they were trying to do. When we went down to the shows, we've talked about this, Tim. Well, Mad Dog Butch, that there was fantastic cards they had down there. You know, from Sting to Flair, and nobody was there.
yeah,
There was 500 people there, if you're lucky.
yeah.
You know?
Well, they did have a couple good houses there, like the one with Sheik and.
He wasn't at that one.
Oh, you didn't go that
No,
one.
that was a Great American Bash. That was like '98.
Yeah, the Skywalkers.
Or '88. Yeah. But no, this was after that.
Yeah.
Because Dusty was still there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Dusty
Yeah,
was gone.
that's right.
But so it was like the early 90s. I mean, it was like around 90, probably around 90 because we didn't even go to our prom. We went to a wrestling show at Kobo. I don't remember like what the matches were, but you know, I remember we saw Undertaker before he left. I think he took on Orndorff, and it was Mark Callis's on his way out because like Orndorff pinned him in like
Yeah, that's right.
5 seconds.
I forgot all about that.
And another time they offered our money back because I think Luger was hurt. It was like Luger and Flair was going to be the main event. So they offered everybody the money back, but Rick Steiner ended up.
Is that the one we were
Wrestling Flair.
throwing stuff at George Cannon at the? Remember, people were throwing hot dogs and that stuff. Cannon was ringside. What match was that?
Cannon was
Was that WWF?
Yeah, that was.
They had to be
WWF
WWF
probably.
because
That was WWF.
Cannon, I don't think, was at those WCW shows, especially in that era.
I just remember that big fat slob was sitting by at the ringside and people were throwing stuff. I don't know what happened, but.
Abdullah no show.
We went to. I remember at WWF. We went to a Piper Snuka match. Was that me and you?
No, I didn't go to that one.
Okay,
with you.
maybe I went with someone else down there.
Yeah.
And Piper, he beat Snuka.
Yeah, but I did go to one in like '85, and it was or '85 or '86. It was probably '85, but the main event was Tito Santana and Jesse Ventura, and George Cannon was sitting there, and everybody was
What
booing
was
him.
Cannon at the time? Was he the Detroit Booker or something? Or
No, I think it was just Vince trying to get his quote territory. Move into get his
Well,
TV spot or
Yeah, because Cannon owned the relationship with Joe Louis.
Okay.
And so that's in order for the WWF to get into Detroit, they had to get in bed with George Cannon for a little bit because he owned the signature on the building.
And then he ended up going to Windsor or something after he got booted out of Detroit.
Well, he was always there.
Oh, he was
Yeah.
always in Windsor? Okay.
yeah, he was still there. He used to have a
Channel 9, wasn't he? On
Yeah.
Channel
He was on Channel 9. He also had a radio show on Sunday nights for a while. And
Yeah.
so his version of the story was that, this really has nothing to do with the territory or whatever they were trying to do at the time. But George Cannon was always trying to say that Hulk Hogan was not a real champion, that the Great Wojo was, because he was the champion of the WWA at the time or whatever. So his story was that
Great Wojo.
that he went to Vince and wanted like a shoot match between Hogan and Wojo, and Vince supposedly was like, yeah, okay, we'll do that or whatever. And then so he said when the time came, Hogan wasn't there, so Cannon says that he confronted Vince, and he's like, Vince did that little chuckle that he always does, and was like, oh, well, I never told him or whatever. But yeah, Cannon was, I think, still just trying to hang on at that point to anything that he could.
Wow.
But
Surprised he wasn't diabetic or had a heart attack because he was probably about 400 pounds when I saw him down there. So.
all right, let's get into the Pile Driver radio show. For anybody that doesn't know, back about 20 years ago, we were all on a show called The Pile Driver on WPON 1460 AM, a little radio station out of, well, actually, it was in Pontiac, right? But
It was
they said it was
West Bloomfield.
But they said it was West Bloomfield, but
I think it was
they always
Pontiac.
said it was Walled Lake, though, didn't they?
Well, I think it moved to Walled Lake.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I think that is Pontiac there, though.
Either way, though, that was apparently that was a pretty big station at one point.
Yeah, a long time ago it was.
before we were on
60
there.
years
But
ago.
but we used to go over to your house and watch the wrestling pay-per-views, and we were already on the Pile Driver radio show. It just wasn't. I guess I had never told you about it because I didn't think that. I don't, for whatever reason, I just didn't think it was anything you'd be interested in. So at first, then you like asked us about it, and so at first you would just kind of like
I'd
call in.
I'd call in and
every
give Manziel a hard time.
as
but-
as Mark for a while, and then we would do we would come here and kind of add graphics to the show. So at one point, I think we put under your name needs to be on Prozac or something like that.
Back up. I think
Okay.
was that when I was calling in? They called me.
This is when
Prozac?
you were calling.
Okay.
in.
Okay.
But that was not meant to become your name or anything. It was just something that we had put under
I thought John
your name when you were
gave me-
calling in. And at the time, again, keeping kayfabe, he had no idea. I never told him that I knew you or he knew you or anything. So,
Not shocking.
so eventually, because at the time I couldn't be on there. I could only be on the show like every 2 months or whatever, and then I'd have to take a month off because of my work schedule. So you were like, well, how can I? I'll just take your place, and I'm like, okay. So again, we never told him or anything. Well, just show up.
Well, didn't I call the week before and say I'm going to?
Oh, you did.
I said
Yeah.
I'm going to be down there next week, so we kind of prepaprepacked all that.
Yeah, you did.
And I showed
told him
up,
that
and he was like terrified. He just gave me some headphones, put me on. So
which is hilarious if you think about it.
I mean,
Just-
doesn't even know me. A guy just walks off the street and says, "Yeah, come on my show." But
So what were your early impressions of the show itself being on there and Rock Action himself?
well, I think Rock Action. I give him a lot of credit for trying to work his business, work an angle where he can increase his business on doing a wrestling show. But obviously, he knew nothing of the subject or the matter. and he read that paper. The show was terrible, but I think we brought some life into it, some expertise into it. Although there was a lot of things, like I said, I'm going to give him credit because he kind of, without him, I don't know that this would all went down, right? Really,
Right.
You have to give credit
That's true.
where credit's due.
Oh, definitely.
There would have been no job hour. There would have been
Definitely.
no,
True.
And for me, I looked at the radio. I looked at the on TV more productive than I did the radio. I think you thought more the radio than
Right.
You were more big into the radio than I was. Yeah. I didn't see the radio hitting as many people as what on TV was doing. I saw on TV as a way of a venue of reaching way more people than what the radio. Now, you really couldn't track that, but when we started doing the Jobber Hour, and Joe was playing it, 4 or 5 times a week and all weekend, I could see the impact of that.
Right.
Where on the radio, you had a couple people, and
Well,
and WPON,
it's hard. It's hard to say
Yeah.
because, I mean, again, and this was a pattern that followed us, for a long time. They kind of gave us some instruction at the radio show, but those guys at that radio station were making their living there.
Yeah.
And so they did not appreciate and those guys were like begging for people to call into their show or interact with them. So, a bunch of people with like no radio experience really go on there, and we start. I mean, I just remember the call screeners just sweating because the calls were like nonstop. Yeah. I mean, again, that would follow us again to hear, but yeah, you could definitely see the change. Like I would listen to the Pile Driver before I was on there, and they just have the same people. It sounded like they were all from the same house, kind of calling over and over, and it was just the same people over and over. And they couldn't answer their questions. That's why I got involved originally, because I was just like, man, these guys can't even.
Who was
answer
the original guys in there? Stone and Steel. I mean,
it was Rock Action, Stone and Steel.
I mean,
and at first I thought Rock Action knew what he was talking about because he had written down he had a lot of stuff written down. So he actually sounded like he was the most knowledgeable at the time. But then when I got on there, I realized that wasn't really the case. But
I think the funniest thing about all of that, and like I said, I'll give credit where credit's due, that he took the initiative to get that all going, and he built, the radio and the on TV. But the funniest probably memory of that was when we went to the independent show out in Milford. And
I had forgotten.
And that guy just came up and said,
"Oh yeah,
hey,
the promoter."
The promoter. He goes, "I'm going to be taking you guys national." And anybody could tell this guy was a mark, and
next.
I know
that he was a total fraud and a jock sniffer. And I thought, okay.
Didn't he follow you into the bathroom?
Yeah, he followed me into the bathroom. I was like,
and trying to like interview you.
Yeah, interview me, and like we're going to go national and all this stuff. And I remember we kind of set cue ball up. John was putting up those WPON posters. I don't know why. Nobody cared. And they said, someone from the Pile Driver, come on over. And we sent cue ball over there. And then when John, he was all mad when he came back. But
and then, that was weird, too, because then Q Ball got back, and I was like, what did they want you for? And he's just like, oh, I don't know.
And then John came out, what did they get?
Like, I don't even know what they, what they were doing.
But remember, so this just tells you John's mentality, though, when the next day I made a purpose that I was going to light into that guy, and I did.
You did.
I mean, I just tore him up, and then sure enough, the guy, if he was legitimate, would have never had any problem with what I was saying.
Exactly.
Right.
But he took it personal, was threatening to come down here, wanting to fight. I said, Joe, him come down here. What's he going to do?
Yeah,
I
no
mean,
kidding.
like I'm scared.
Yeah.
Joe was, I mean, not Joe, but Rock was shaking his pants about all that. But that guy was the biggest fraud ever. Anybody could really say anything to him, and he kind of bought it. So I'm sorry for that. So, that was a good memory as far as getting that guy, because I felt good nailing that guy. To the
And honestly, I think that Rock Action thinks that may have still been a legitimate thing, and I think he thinks that you ruined it for him.
Well, flip the script real quick. Do you forget that one of the things he complained about was, he wanted to get advertisers, and I went out and got a national sponsor for him. And what did he do?
I was going to get to that, but
He ruined that. So he wanted to go national. When I did bring him business, then he flipped the script on that and ruined that. So he probably doesn't even remember that. So
no, I'm pretty sure
the Red
that,
Hook contract that I was going to get him.
He remembers.
I'm pretty sure that we brought that up.
Yeah.
When he showed up here. But yeah, so the whole thing, and we'll get into. Well, we got to mention Ron Cameron, because
that got me a banning from that radio station at that point, didn't it?
Yeah, we'll get to that, but
Okay.
but that was the whole thing with when we would walk into the studio, Ron Cameron would be there, and if anybody doesn't know, Ron Cameron was actually kind of a big deal at some point in local
with Bob
sports.
Page back in the 70s.
Yeah, so he
Well respected.
yeah.
I wouldn't go
but-
there.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know
he was
about
a name.
Yeah,
He was a
he was
big
a name.
name.
But either way, he was doing his own sports show there. He had a ton of sponsors, and when we would walk in, he'd have the phone book out, and that's all he'd be doing. He'd just be going through business, calling every business, trying to get them to sponsor his show.
He was a machine.
So, Rack Action at one point tried to do the same thing, never got a sponsor. You get us Red Hook Beer, which was a microbrewery out in like Seattle or something, and he was just the jealousy was just so obvious, like on that show.
Not only
Yeah.
that, let me just a little quick story on that. I had the national state manager of Red Hook contact.
Called in the show a couple times.
No, he talked to Rock about the sponsor.
I believe he called in on that show, correct?
Yeah, he called in.
Yeah.
And then he talked to him in a phone call, and then later he told me, he goes, "Does the guy want to do business? What is going on with this guy? Who did you set me up with?"
Right.
So I mean, it was just.
I had Ace Hardware for him too, and he didn't want it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But getting back
That's
to Cameron, that whole angle of he dogged. I don't know. In retrospect, do you really think Cameron really dogged the wrestling show? I don't believe it.
Just a couple years ago, I think I asked him, and he said, "Well, no, he never really said that." But yeah, he fired us all up by claiming that he was listening to Ron Cameron's show, and he always said this was Rock Action's thing. He always said we're just all a bunch of idiots, and we're this and we're that and whatever. So we kind of made him and his show on WPON a target of ours. At one point, I had done a prank phone call, and then just out of the blue, on my days off one day, I was going to the bank, and I just happened to have it on WPON, and I hear a familiar voice talking to Ron, and you're talking to him about sports for a little while, so I'm thinking, oh, okay, maybe he just wanted to call and talk to him about sports. And then right before you hang up, you're like, well, allegedly it's you.
Allegedly.
Right before you hang up, you're like, oh yeah, excuse me, one more thing, Ryan, you're a effing fat ass. And it was just like dead silence, and you could tell that he was trying to get at his call screener, but there was no delay.
No, there was no delay.
There was never any delay there. So I was not there the next week. But so when you guys go in, explain what happens when you go in that week.
I think I don't know if it was a screen or something, knew it was me. Well, allegedly, he thought it was me.
Well, I mean,
and then he told the general manager there. So then she gave me I don't know if it was a 1 month banning or a week ban. I don't remember, but she gave me the boot for a while.
She tried to take your license
tried to
and
take my license.
wasn't going to
She
report
report
you.
me to FCC or something like that, or I said, go right ahead,
But their ultimate solution to that was to fix that was, and they already had problems apparently with people complaining about swearing on our show. Again, there was no delay, but a lot of times the caller would just get excited.
It's the station's fault we're swearing. There wasn't a delay.
We didn't swear. Honestly, we didn't swear that much.
I know.
A lot of the no, I know. But a lot of times it was the callers that would just get caught up in whatever they were saying and drop an F-bomb or whatever.
Yeah.
Normally we would just pass, not even acknowledge it, go past it. Supposedly they had, but I think it all goes back again to jealousy. I think that a lot of those guys there were just jealous of our show because we were getting so many calls and, it was like a popular show. It had to be one of, if not the most popular show on there.
Oh, easily, by far.
At the time. Yeah.
And I would say the same thing about the Jobber Hour. I mean, there was a lot of, I think, behind-the-scene politics, even with ONTV. A lot of the directors of the powers that be that didn't like, for some unknown reason, didn't like a popular public broadcast station wrestling show that was very popular. So, like I said, in retrospect, I like the ONTV more than I did the radio. And I'm trying to remember back after that all went down,
But
How many more shows did I do on the radio? I don't know if I did that many more, or I just was like,
But going back to that, there's what I was going to say was their solution was to not allow phone calls anymore.
Yeah.
We kind of knew that would kill the show.
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of led to
I think we ran another month,
the downfall.
month and a half after that.
Yeah, but I think the problem with them is they were so desperate for what was it, like $45 that they wanted the money so bad that they were.
I think it was more than that.
it was 55.
$55.
It was $55 a week.
Yep.
Okay.
But they were
All
so
right.
desperate for money that they were willing to do anything because they had no ratings, no listeners, no nothing. So
Right.
anyway,
So this kind of snowballed into, I mean, everybody knew that the writing was on the wall if they were going to keep us from getting phone calls, and I think that that's what they wanted all along,
Sure.
because it was making them look bad. Because those guys had gone to school for radio, they couldn't,
Spend all that money for.
like I said, they were like begging for callers or any type of interaction with anybody. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But
And really, they never promoted our show like they were supposed to. Within that weekly
Right.
money that John was paying them, he was supposed to get
That's
X
right.
number of commercial spots
That's-
throughout the day,
yeah,
and they never.
exactly. They never did. I think we'd
They
play them
never
on our own
hyped our show
show
up.
because that was the only way they'd get played was on our own show.
but his objective wasn't so much a wrestling show; it was to grow his business, correct? And I don't know, did he ever get any business off of that show?
He says that he never got one call when it comes to that. And
He could be right.
He did try to get primetime. He had something going on with primetime sports cards here in Lake Orion too. Like he set up something that if you went in there and mentioned the Pile Drivers show. So when I went in there to talk to Mike, the owner, I was like, "Hey, did you get any feedback with it?" He's like, "Nope, I did not get one call about that." So you could be right in some aspects, but about the Java Hour reaching more people, but again, I mean the actual listening area was not really close to Lake Orion as far as WPON goes.
Well, I think one of
I mean, you could kind of get it in. I mean, I could kind of get it in Oxford and Lake Orion.
Yeah, but south of here, I mean, it went.
But that's what I'm saying. Who's gonna?
But I mean,
if you're listening to it down there, are you really gonna come to Lake Orion?
Right, but
and
he had
go to
advertisers south of here. He had relationships with those guys. So, I mean, there was a little bit more than.
Well, eventually he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the whole thing, it's so hard to really totally be correct as far as radio compared to a visual on TV.
Well, unless you have a method of
And
measuring
you don't
it,
know.
you know?
Yeah,
So-
there's really no way of measuring it, so we don't know. But I can just
Right.
say that I honestly never had one person ever, and how would you measure ever talk to me about that show, the radio show.
Well, how would they know it's you? I mean, you
Yeah.
know, like on TV, I would have
Yeah.
people recognize me, like around town or whatever, from the TV show, but you don't have that luxury on the radio.
Yeah, I agree.
Before we move on to the television show, do you any other memories that stick out from the radio show itself?
I just remember after that happened, someone took there was an on-screen shot of the general sales manager, and they sent me, remember the famous email, like, "You're scared, take that down, please."
Because
she responded, "Who is this?"
I don't remember that one.
It was kind of an inside joke.
It wasn't a
allegedly.
Yeah,
I'm not sure who it was, but
somebody had sent a picture of
the general manager
of herself to her and said, "Please take this down. You're scaring my children," or something like that.
Okay.
That was kind of like the final. That was kind of like the final
was
rock thrown at. But
the sad part, she responded to that, though. I mean, she
I know.
actually did respond to that.
Yeah. So because of what was going on with they banned the phone calls. Rock Action eventually kind of hands the radio show over to Cue Ball, and then he.
Can I interrupt one thing real quick?
Yeah.
Though, that I remember. I just went off my brain. I just
Go ahead.
remember the memories of this. When you left, a lot of times either it was me and I don't know if you changed or whatever, but you were there and it was just me and Gene, or Buddy Rogers, me and
Bryce
Buddy Rogers.
Beemer.
Bryce Beemer, whatever.
Right.
Whatever the hell. What the hell's your name? You're gonna have to write that and put it in front of me. But there would be the funny part was there would be shows, and I'm sure Buddy can remember this. We would just from the moment we said go, we would hammer him nonstop for the hour. I mean, we just gave him a beat down. Just we were relentless on him to the point where there would be some shows he wouldn't even talk. It would be just me and Buddy Rogers doing all the talking and all the callers.
Oh no,
and we would just hammer him. And,
no, it wasn't just you. There were shows that I was on too, where all three of us.
Yeah,
and
I get it. Yeah.
Because I remember showing up here one time to do the editing, and I pull up next to him, and I'm just like, hey, what's up? And yeah, he was not happy with me because he had like listened to it, and I don't think he realized it during the show, but after when he listened to it, it was just us hammering him. And I think that was the same show, the one that I'm thinking of. I think it was the same show where he debuted his Great Lakes Fitness Guide article. That was a total mess, and so we just like hammered him on that. He was just getting it from all sides.
But he dished it out too. He played a good sport.
No,
with
he
it
did
most of the time. You know?
No, he did. But that particular one upset him. I think he was also upset that we were not contributing any money, even though you had the sponsor that he ruined. But anyway, so.
In the big picture, though, I will give him credit for starting.
No, he definitely deserves credit. Like you said, that would not have existed. This would not exist, probably. The Jobber Hour would definitely not have existed if it wasn't for him doing that.
Yeah, you got to figure we got newspaper write-ups and other things associated with that too.
I'm trying to think. When I left, you were still doing the radio show. How long did you do it for after I left?
It was probably couple months after you left, because then they took our phone calls away. Because there was a length of time where we had, I was on two shows sometimes. I would either call in on your show, on the TV show, and still do the radio show. So at one time we had...
Oh, see, I didn't think... Okay.
At one time we had the radio show, which was separate from the TV show you guys were doing. Or at first...
That's right. Yeah.
First,
okay, I remember that. You stayed on.
Frank Williams
you stayed
Jr.
on the radio for a while.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So we had like 2 nights in a row where there were wrestling.
Okay. Well, let's get into why we got the Jobber Hour in the first place. Because of that, partially because of the calls. But when we would come here and edit the shows, because we would show the radio shows at first on this public access station. And on the Oxford, we try to get it on the Oxford station.
It went to Pontiac and Waterford and Clarkston at times too. So
yeah, it did. It did.
But it was bicycled around the territory.
Right. So Joe Johnson from the studio was like, "Hey, we are going to get a live call-in line, telephone line. So if you guys want to start doing a show here." So I think originally we were going to do both. I think everybody was still on board to do both originally. And then at some point in there, Rock Action decided just to kind of hand it off to Cue Ball.
The radio show, but he did maybe 1 or 2 of the live shows, and then he didn't do the live shows much.
Yeah, I think he might have been in the first couple, and I wasn't there probably the first couple months or a month.
Okay, who was the first couple? It was me, Cue Ball,
it was just
and Rock, right?
You guys originally started it, yes.
Okay.
And then
John
Rock,
left,
and then Rock Action stopped showing up, unless he felt like it. It took a while before we brought Brace Beemer, Buddy Rogers on.
Yeah. I had a problem with that because his ego was so massive he wouldn't come on there and go onto the radio. He did leave me. You got to admit, this is one thing I'm upset about Buddy Rogers. He did leave me hanging many times because, as you know, on Sunday night we would watch a pay-per-view at my house.
Yes.
And then Monday was Monday Night Wars.
Yes.
And then Tuesday we did the show.
Yes. We did the
many times
radio show on Tuesday, and then we did the Jobber Hour on Wednesday.
I'm going back to when I was strictly just doing the Jobber Hours off radio, and it was just me and Cue Ball. And many times on that Sunday, Buddy Rogers would give me a guarantee I will be at the show. I'm going to be there. So, and of course he would pull a no show. So
I don't remember. I remember having to work sometimes, but I don't remember hanging you out to dry.
I think
think
we
he
did
did.
do a couple things in the beginning. I remember like him via phone where there was like a trivia challenge
Yeah.
between him and Cue Ball. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to say this.
Okay.
I want to say that you actually deserve the credit for naming the show the Jobber Hour as well, because I was against that. I wanted to. We were big fans of a show called Pro Wrestling This Week, and I wanted to be more of something like that. At the time, I don't remember what happened. Somebody came up. I think you came up with the Jobber Hour.
I think I was based
I
on
didn't-
it was going to be me and Cue Ball, wasn't it? I came up. We're going to be a jobber.
I don't
Hour.
really
Two
remember.
jobbers and-
I don't remember like how it all came about, but I remember like being
think it was under
being
that- I think it was
anti
like-
that.
I think it was something like that.
But then it
effect.
turned out, but I mean it turned out fine for what it ended up being. But yeah, in the beginning I was like, yeah, I don't want to call it that, but it
originally,
turned out good.
Let's go back to the origin. The original Jobber Hour was supposed to be me, Gene, Buddy Rogers, Cue Ball, and John. And I think John lasted an episode. He just took off. Maybe he did an episode and he was done with it. And then you must have still been doing radio with.
Yeah, I was.
At the time.
Yeah.
And then it was pretty much me and Cue Ball for a while till then you came back full. I don't know if it was because you had a shift in your job or something, or
Oh
you
yeah,
came back.
I did.
and then you
Yeah, I went to a
left, you
different
came
shift.
back,
So
and then,
yeah,
like, a
but
couple
then
times-
for a while, then I was on there.
Yeah.
For most of the time.
And I think
We-
one thing I will say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but one
No, go
thing, looking back on it, if you really think about it, we were doing an hour show, it's just me and Cue Ball. And neither one of us, I wasn't an expert at wrestling. I was a super fan, but I didn't have your guys' knowledge.
Well,
That's
Cue
why I'd
Ball-
always get mad at Gene, like, give me someone who's got some credibility, who knows what the hell's going on, you know?
Well, anytime I was like watching those old ones, it was like Cue Ball was just reading all of his info off of all of his rumors online, and then he'd like throw it to you, and you would just be like totally ignore him and like throw it to like something else. You're like, okay, yeah, but what about this? And like trying to stir up some controversy with like him and whoever he had an issue with that week or whatever. But
But the show,
it needed that
Yeah.
because it was
look
just-
at the basis. If we'd have been just talking factual wrestling, how bad would that have been?
But-
You know,
but I-
I had to make it entertaining.
But I
you
will
know?
say
You did a good job at it too.
But I will say right off the bat, there was fans because you
Yeah.
guys did take calls
And
right
it
off
started,
the bat.
yeah, it started growing and growing. And as we get in more about the Jobber Hour, there's just a lot to it that you and I have talked about. That just some amazing things that people.
Well, you touched on this a little bit, and I
Okay.
want to mention this.
Okay,
first.
I'll let you go. You probably got
uh,
a syllabus, so I'm not going to go.
As far as being, you guys would get recognized in public.
Yeah.
To the point where, like, I remember a story where you were at the grocery store or something, and you had kids
following,
kids
Frank
following you.
Williams, yeah. And what about the other aspect too? When I went into politics, it launched a political career in Lake Orion. It tells you how bad Lake Orion is to hire a guy off the Jobber Hour. But
Well, do you think that?
yeah, I put it down. I didn't hide from it.
No, I
I put
did we get you elected?
I don't know that you guys did.
But being on the show.
But being on the show, I
something
did.
to do.
Yeah. That's what.
And that was one of the things. Guy from a wrestling show won. So.
But that's funny too because we should get into this too.
That was before Ventura, right?
Yeah.
You were the first.
You picked the name.
What a waste of 3 years that was. But anyway, go ahead.
But you picked the name Frank Williams Jr.
And I see where you're going with this, but keep going with it because.
Well, I'm just going to say explain how you picked that name for people that don't know.
Okay,
We know, but
Frank Williams Jr. was the ultimate jobber who never won a
Frank
match.
Williams Sr.
Frank Williams Sr. And I just took a cue. He got his butt kicked on Piper's Pit, and that's how. He got the hell beat out of him basically. Almost looked like Piper really legitimately did hit him there.
Well, he did at the end because
he got mad because he came back.
He came back.
Yeah.
He didn't stay down.
So he's still inside the ring no matter what. But so I picked him as my son because he was the ultimate jobber. But on the political, when I ran for the political office, some people thought that was with Mildred Williams. Like I was trying to piggyback off that, and they were oblivious to who Frank Williams Jr. was.
Right.
Who was Mildred Williams?
Was
Mildred Williams is okay. We're going to totally break kayfabe here. I don't think it's ever been revealed on the show, but Frank Williams Jr. is my sister's husband. That's how we've all known each other for so long. And again, I don't even know if the other people on our show really. I'm sure we told them, but I think it went one ear and out the other.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
one-
And I think they would forget about it and think that you still just showed up out of the blue one day on the radio show. But there was just like an odd thing because you're on the show as Frank Williams Jr., but you run obviously
As
as
myself.
yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean,
And people thought like, oh, he's just trying to, get votes because she was very popular. And like, Orion, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with these people? Like, you don't know who Frank Williams Jr. is, but anyway, there were so many things with that I can recollect, good memories as far as how we did the job or how it grew to how many calls we got.
yeah,
And just like WPON, well, I mean, am I getting ahead of myself?
no, go ahead.
How it grew led to the match.
Well,
I'll stop there. But I'm saying how it grew, how it became political, and as always be like any situation, the powers that be that the hierarchy. And I'm not saying Joe or anybody. Joe did a fantastic job, and the crew did. But a lot of people.
He was ousted too.
He got
eventually
ousted,
he got ousted too.
But they didn't want that for some reason because it was getting over with a lot of people. But like I said, I played in the Orion League, and so many people would come up and talk to me about that show. And like I said, give Joe credit for putting that show on all weekend. And I know they had a problem with people calling on the weekend. They finally had to put something up. Hey, this is not a live
that's
show.
right.
Remember that?
Pre-recorded, yeah.
Pre-recorded because there were so many calls coming in. So, and it got to the point right when we started the show, the phone was already ringing. So
yeah, exactly.
So if we had to get our talking points in for what happened on Monday night or the pay-per-view or whatever, we literally had maybe 5-8 minutes, and it was off to the races. With questions and with everything going on. So, but yeah, it was good. It was interesting to do and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of the part that I keep forgetting that I want to get back to is so many people. You wonder they really believe the angle.
Yeah.
That's the shocking thing about all of it. Like when you guys got kicked off, or we were doing some angle. Like people would say, "My man's like, what's going on with that?"
Even people that we know.
I mean, I'm thinking you guys got
And we're-
jobs.
Even my
Families,
relatives would
Friends.
believed some of the stuff that was going on in there.
Yeah.
I'd be in my Orion League, and the guys would be talking to me between games. I'm thinking, my God, you have a family, and this is a public access wrestling show. And so many of them would just like say, well, how do you do that for an hour? Like, they would think it would be amazing that we just come and do an hour. And I want to tell them, I just write, 10, 15 things down. Not even that. 10 things down, maybe 5 things down. And we just do the whole hour, non-scripted, nothing, They didn't believe it.
Yeah, that was
a lot of people didn't believe it.
Yeah, that was another thing. They thought that everything was like written down. I mean,
Yeah, we had, like,
you
cue
couldn't.
cards.
There was no way you could do that
Yeah.
because we got so many calls. And again, eventually the same thing carrying over from WPON. The same thing with the Jobber Hour. It was like you said, calls would start before the show even started. They'd be sweating back there, answering the phones, running around. They'd just be like nonstop for the whole hour.
Well, we kind of do that here. I mean, have a format of maybe what you want to talk about, but once it gets going, you just kind of.
I mean, I think at some
Never
point
know.
we were probably averaging 20 calls, maybe.
It
was
probably
at one point,
something
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
I mean, you're talking an hour, so let alone with tape,
Yeah.
clips.
I
and
mean,
things
there
like
was
that.
some people that would call.
Yeah, some kids.
Repeatedly. Yeah, but
it was-
a lot of them.
But it was kind of cool when I talked to some people later. They would say, even the kid, people, they would say, "Oh yeah, we'd watch the Jobber Hour on Tuesdays." Like families, like their dad and their kids or sons would go in there and watch the Jobber Hour, which I thought was awesome and cool. But I think we hit the right time too. I think also with that public access show when wrestling was so big.
It was
so
hot
huge.
at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, people would just gravitate probably over to our show real quick to see what our opinions, the clips, and
Right.
things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And entertainment.
Yeah.
If anything, it was you kind of had it set up like it was almost like a wrap-up show.
It
know?
almost was. I mean, like I said, kind of going back to the pro wrestling this week.
Yeah.
And that's and I do want to just off topic, but I just saw that Joe Pedicino had a stroke.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Bonnie Blackstone. I follow her on Facebook, and she had like a whole video. It's pretty sad, but
I hope he winds up okay.
I hope so too. He's at home now at least, but yeah, it doesn't look very good. But
And one Gordon Soley, we can't forget about Gordon.
so if you guys can remember any of the major like things, angle wise that happened before this, but feel free to bring it up. But at one point you decided you were going to kind of like back off on the show because you had gotten elected to the village council.
And
Yeah,
you were
I thi-
getting,
well,
you were
I
getting
think-
some heat too.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I'm trying to remember why I did, because I know I was, because the meetings were on the Mondays, so I was missing the shows. So
Oh, you're missing
I
the
wasn't
show.
seeing what.
Oh, okay.
So I missed. I'd be at the council meeting when they were doing Monday Night Wars. So I didn't see it. So why would I show Tuesday and not be able to comment on something I didn't see at all? So.
Well, I remember at one point there was a question. I mean, well, actually, before that, you and I got into it about something, so you like choked me out. So then I think that you got taken off the show at that point. But then later on, I think you came back and
I came back
and
when I
then-
was on the council. That's when we started the angle.
But you
when
did-
I got elected to get rid of you guys.
But this is I'm talking before that though. This is quite a ways before that. When you left, there was something like it was kind of up in the air of who you were gonna hand the show over to, angle wise, me or Cue Ball, and something happened where you ended up having to give it to me. I don't remember what it was. I don't remember if it was like a trivia question or whatever. He thought it was a shoot. But either way, so that happened. And then, well, actually, so I don't know. The timeline's kind of screwed up here because we actually did another person that we were trying to get on the show because you brought in somebody. Oh, we were supposed to have the pose down between Cue Ball and Rock Action at some point.
Oh, yeah.
And then Rock Action no-showed. You also you also sent somebody in there to challenge Rock Action for not showing up. Like one of your buddies,
Yeah.
some big dude,
Yeah.
came in there and like challenged Rock Action to I think a pose down.
And then we never saw him again, did we?
Then
For, like,
well we did.
Did we see him again for a while, or did he hide? Did he take off? I don't remember.
Well, yeah, he wasn't showing up at that point. But that's what eventually. So he doesn't show up. So eventually, you and I, kind of behind the scenes, pull like some strings. You convincing Cue Ball, me convincing Rock Action that they should have a shoot fight.
Well, I think back up there. Didn't I? Probably. Did I? Okay. Did it go down that way, or did I instigate Cue Ball and he kind of responded to it? Like I threw it out there and he kind of responded and I jumped all over it.
That could have been, but that was, I
And then
think
you worked on Rock to get him to show,
yeah, but
and then we built up the whole angle to the match.
yeah, but I think it was supposed to be because originally I think it was just supposed to be the pose down
Yeah.
between Rock Action
I
and
think it
Cue
was-
Ball, and then he no showed. He kept no showing. So yeah, I think you tweaked Cue Ball up to challenge him to an actual
Wrestle
match,
match.
maybe. Yeah. So we worked on them, and so the big question was whether Rock Action was going to show up for that.
Yeah.
He and I didn't mention this when he showed up here a couple months ago, but he was worried because I remember like I had to convince him. I was on the phone with him like almost every night, saying, "Dude, you have to show up. We've been building this up." And then he was like, "Well, he's like anything can happen in a shoot fight." He's like, "What if he catches me with whatever?"
Sure.
It could have happened. So he was worried about it. I know you worked on Cue Ball, but I don't know.
Well, I only worked on
but-
Cue Ball. I only worked on Cue Ball as far as building the match. I mean, he was supposedly training in the dungeons of hoops and all that other
oh,
shit.
yeah,
Yeah,
that-
didn't he have a
that's right.
video, like a
So,
training
yeah,
video
he did
from
like
Hoops?
a training video,
Where
all
he
that
was,
stuff.
he was.
But-
I believe he was jumping into garbage cans or
kegs.
something.
He was doing something with kegs or something.
Yeah, jumping onto kegs or something. But so there was never any, as far as you know, Cue Ball never doubted that
Cue Ball was showing.
you never had to worry
No,
about
I
him
never had to
showing up.
worry. He was going to do it, so he was definitely going to do the match, which I give him credit to do it. I thought it was going to be a little bit more entertaining, and I always regret one thing. Though,
Well, no. It was I was worried that it was not going to be entertaining, and it exceeded my expectations, but for various reasons. But go ahead.
But it was good that we had a live audience. And I remember the one mistake, I was playing softball or something that day, or I was whatever, but I had like a referee shirt. And the one thing I always regret was I didn't wear that referee shirt. I had to come right from the softball.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was the best referee outfit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
For
Mr. Beast Clarkston.
Yeah.
But
I'm a softball guy.
But for anybody that doesn't know, so
I took criticism from Buddy Rogers at home.
So Frank,
I remember that.
So Frank Williams Jr.
I was trying to draw that thing as long as I could.
So Frank Williams Jr. ended up being the referee. Buddy Rogers and myself, Beemer and myself,
And
ended
Rock
up
had a
being the
problem with that.
commentators.
Remember, he was a little worried about me being referee.
He was.
Yeah.
I was going to Pearl Harbor him or something.
Yeah, he was. I was worried that it was just going to end like this.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Thank God for Rock Action for drawing it out as long as he
Rock,
did, and playing up the heel role.
Let's give Rock credit one thing about he always wanted to be. He never understood that he wanted to be the babyface, right?
Yeah.
He wanted everybody to like him, and everybody couldn't stand him. But he did embrace the role of being a heel.
Oh, he loved it.
And then
did.
all the fans that came down here, think about that. I mean, Joel's probably listening now, but we had Nails. I mean, they would probably never do that in a million years now.
No.
Well, that's why there was never a rematch, because we did
got
want,
lucky. I mean,
everybody wanted a rematch.
Had
but-
Rock wanted to throw him around probably pretty good, it would have ended.
Right.
Give Rock credit because the match lasted 10 minutes or something
Yeah,
like
at
that.
least,
He definitely
5 of Buddy
He
Rogers
definitely-
criticizing the referee to get this match over with. This is age of cue ball. Here I'm trying to give the fans who showed up, a little action, and
Hey,
Buddy
you know
Rogers
what?
is dog. What is with this referee? That's a slow.
I will
3
say
count.
though,
I
I gave you
agenda
credit because you were calling it right down the middle, and it was a legit. I mean, it was a legit wrestling match.
Sure.
Without the punching and the striking,
but
everything else went.
But
exactly.
In fairness,
Although Rock Action did get a couple.
Yeah, he got a couple
couple in
blows,
there.
and I had to talk to him. But I was.
You didn't see him though. You have to admit that he worked you on that.
Yeah. But he did play it great. I mean, his character was great.
Yeah.
Those were open hand shots.
But I
That's
think
what
the
he
best
kept
part,
saying.
looking in review, is Mad Dog Butch is saying the very beginning, he was scared. There was no. Remember, we said go, and no one did anything.
Yeah.
You know, so he was like, wait, and then once he realized that there was going to be no offense against him, then he kind of relaxed.
It took a little
He embraced
while.
the role, but at first he was nervous because he didn't go on the attack or anything. He just, they were kind of waiting themselves out. I'm like, everybody's going, come on, let's go,
Free cue ball into the spectators.
But ultimately, I think it was fine. I think it was actually a good thing. I think that it started out that way. Although, John pushed him into one of the spectators' laughs right off the bat. That was another problem that later,
I think about all these parents brought their kids down to see a live match. That's hilarious. They got a live match down at WPON.
Well, you got to figure it
not
was
WPON,
real
but
though. So
on
like the
TV.
way they started.
Yeah.
It was legit. We built it up for I don't know how long.
It's not like
we
they're gonna
had
start
to
it like
build
a-
it up for I don't know how long.
And Rock didn't have
And-
one fan. Not one wanted him to win. They wanted him out of there. So, I mean, he played
you're
the
right.
heel great.
Hey, there's something to be said for the sympathetic babyface. No matter what there.
And if Q-Ball would have shown just a little bit of offense, one offensive move, I would have been happy. But,
Well, I was voting for Rock Action.
yeah, well, that's a little bit of an understatement. But
But again, to the shows, not to toot our own horn, but beep beep. And as far as the calls go, I remember as soon as the show started, like normal, we're getting calls. Rock Action, cue ball. We're trying to do the show like normal up until that point. So we really don't know what's going on, but we do get word that Rock Action's there. So we're like, okay, thank God it's going to go down. But as soon as the match started, we did not get one phone call. And then as soon as the match was over, the phone started ringing again right off the hook. And I think we were even able to get a couple in. John was able to do, or Rock Action was able to do like a post-match interview. I think,
that was
I don't know
awesome.
if Q-Ball was still there or if
no,
he
he
took
stormed
off.
off. He stormed off, I think. He was I don't think he'd left the premise, but he'd left the set.
The
Yeah,
studio.
the set.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing it was presented. I mean, it was a legitimate sporting event.
Oh, and
People like walking in, it had the camera shot of like cue ball coming in through the doors and
Oh, yeah, it was-
down the hall.
Oh yeah, it was great. And I neglected to mention this for anybody that didn't know. This was actually a loser leaves the show match.
Yeah.
So and that was totally legit.
Well,
But then the next week,
Yeah.
you show up in the.
cue ball was already there.
You show up. He was there.
Well, he
One-
was hanging around wanting to get back on the show for
well,
a while.
yeah.
and that is what eventually led to the short-lived Bubbles the Clown angle.
I thought that was
because
going to work good. Well, I thought, well, how can you bring him back after he just lost a lifetime
well,
match?
right, and
Yeah, you
So
gotta
I was
put him
trying
on-
to come with a gimmick for him because I know he wanted back on the show.
right.
And I thought Bubbles the Clown would be a very good gimmick to
Yeah.
bring him back because I think there was something going on in WWF with a clown. Or I don't remember what it was at the time.
I there wasn't at that point
But I thought-
anymore. But
Did you not agree with me, Matt, Butch, that Bubbles the Clown, that could have been a good angle to work a lot of good material with
Yeah,
that?
because I remember you.
Entertainment.
Yeah, because you would call me and you'd be like, "Hey, he's calling me. He wants to get back on, whatever." And I was just like, "Man, at first I was, kind of taking a hard stance. I'm like,
you were.
I'm like,
Very hard.
I'm
You
like,
were.
I'm because if it was the other way around, there's no way that
I
Q-Ball
agree.
would have wanted
Yeah.
Rock Action back on that show.
Yeah.
So that was my stance. But eventually, so you and I talked about it, and I think that somehow that came up, and you were like, okay, well, what if he comes back as a clown?
Like the Midnight Rider gimmick
for
with
whatever
Dusty Rhodes.
for whatever reason, and so we agreed to that. I told.
But Rock
And-
ruined
and
that.
Rock
Rock
Action-
he ruined that. That's the one that
he did because it's hard to say if he knew something was up because because he said he was going to show up and he hadn't been back on the show for a while at that point, and he told me he was going to show up and I was like, no, don't show up this week. And so then he knew something was up, and so he was like, because I didn't want to tell him why, and I should have just came up with some BS answer. I don't know, but I couldn't think of anything. I didn't tell him what was going on, but I was just like, just don't come this week. So of course he shows up, ruins the whole thing. We only got like a couple shots of Bubbles the Clown, but and I know Q Ball thought that I set that up. I did not set that up. I tried to get Rock Action to not show up, but but Rock Action's his own man, so who am I to
He
stop?
comes and goes as he pleases.
Exactly. Where do you see the Bubbles the Clown? If that doesn't happen, where do you see the Bubbles the Clown angle going?
Well, the thing was, and I had no problem with it from a creative standpoint, that you were pretty adamant that he not come back. And I agreed that had he won the match, there's no way he'd want John back. So, and he really wanted back on the show. So I was just trying to come up with an angle, a gimmick where it wouldn't be him, but obviously it would be him. But I think that when I came up with the gimmick, I think you kind of signed off on that. The clown, the Bubbles the Clown, if he's willing to do that, we could run with that angle for a while.
And I do have to say, I mean, he got to the studio early. He had his fiance at the time.
And she
really did him up good.
The clown.
Yeah.
So like I said, unfortunately, we only got like a couple shots of it because we were all because he
Wasn't
was in the
sitting behind
studio.
a camera, or
Wait, no,
no?
he was sitting there in the studio, but we were gonna wait for the big reveal at the end of the show, and then Rock Action shows up and
Yeah.
ruins it.
Yeah.
Again, Q Ball storms out of the studio
So,
because he thought that we had like set him up, which
Yeah.
is not the case at all.
but I think, don't you think that would have been a good angle, Bubbles the Clown, for a while to?
Oh, that that would have been
very
great.
Good,
Yeah.
especially after he lost a lifetime match.
Exactly.
So I mean, I don't know what else. What do you think, buddy? What other gimmick could I came up with other than, or we could have just been flat out adamant. You're done for a couple months.
You couldn't put him under a mask because
Yeah. I mean, everyone knew what it was.
that's Butch Blood. He was the only one with
Yeah.
the mask,
yeah,
So it had to
I
be
think-
something different.
Yeah, I think that's what he had proposed at one point, and
Yeah.
it wouldn't have worked.
No.
So that I think was the perfect solution, and unfortunately,
But you could have done a ton of.
unfortunately,
stuff with
we
it,
didn't get to explore that more. But
So I'm trying to think.
And he probably could have.
He would-
did pretty well at it,
Yeah, was he off?
I think
the
so.
show?
I think he was
How many
learning
weeks
some,
was he off the show? Was
some
he off? He
balloon
wasn't
animal.
off that long, was he? I don't think he was.
he was off for a while, and then
Maybe a month?
So then after the Bubbles the Clown thing goes,
We brought him back. I think we just brought him back because I think you were doing something, right? Or you couldn't make the show, or
No, I'm pretty sure that I was solid on there, but we let him. It was quite a while again before we started doing the QTV thing, where he was like doing a thing where he was like interrupting our feed and coming on there.
okay, I remember that.
So
now.
we did that.
So that's how he came back into the fold.
Okay.
We did the angle where actually it was Q Ball under a paper bag.
Yeah.
which also was the same show that Rock Action got presented the actual TCI title. So there was that, but no, he never came back on full time. I think until we get to
so I left. When I left, then he became full time again, right? But didn't he do a couple of shows by himself?
No, just for no.
Did he ever do a show by himself?
He might have in the early days, but so I mean I think we were all in agreement that the shoot fight was probably the apex of the Jobber Hour.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But there was another angle that came along later, and that was this started with, and I'm not sure what your mentality was because you were not actually on there, but you were you had got a hold of Dan Hemme, and I think you were trying to kind of like infiltrate our show, but I had gotten somehow I had an inkling of what was going on. So I think you tried to do like a takeover sort of angle thing as the political figure first. And that's where that music that your intro that we played earlier came from.
Yeah.
So so that didn't really go over the way that I think that whatever,
but
whatever that had been planned out.
Well, let me just say something real quick on that point.
Okay.
When I thought it would be a good angle for use the political thing with the ONTV because I was over the ONTV, whatever the board was, because the council was above that or something, and I thought it'd be a great angle to use
over the cable commission.
Over the cable commission, correct? That's what it was, and I thought we could roll with that. But the funny part, even though that angle didn't work out, there was dummies on the board that really thought that thing was legit.
Well,
confronting me on that.
It worked then. The angle did work.
The angle did work.
No. I'm saying the initial show where you did not let us know what you were doing. You went to Dan Hemme. You contacted Dan Hemme secretly, and you like had him like set up the beginning. You might not even remember this part of it, but so then we were gonna drop it. So then you just wanted to like drop it, the whole thing, and I was like, well, no, because that's one thing that I've always hated in wrestling is just dropping an angle like that. So we were actually at your house watching a pay-per-view with EW, and then that's how. So then we came up with the whole thing where you brought them in Cue Ball. So that's when Cue Ball came back, and EW came back or debuted, and they were supposed to be your corporate lackey type guys that took the show over. So that was probably the second biggest angle that we did, and then that ended up being the Frank Williams Jr. hour.
But there was dummies in Lake Orion that really thought that was legitimate. That's the point I'm trying to say.
So they were actually upset. They actually thought that you were trying to use your political clout.
I used my political clout to get rid of you guys and try to take over the show.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people thought all that crap was legit.
Oh no, I know that. I know, but it's just funny.
I shouldn't say crap, but it was good stuff.
No, but it's just funny to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, I'm just like, this is a wrestling show. Are you kidding me?
So they come in. So Buddy Rogers and I are doing the show as normal. You bring in your guys. Joe Johnson comes in and quote fires us.
Joe Johnson was the
I'll give Joe
producer for ONTV.
Yeah, and Joe did a fantastic job doing that.
I thought awesome.
Yeah.
When I saw that episode later, I remember he did a really good job doing it.
He did. And he
sold it.
That episode is out there. I have posted it on my Facebook page before. I'll post it up again. So that runs for a little while, but unfortunately,
they couldn't.
Well, no, I mean,
how many weeks did it last? Did it even last a month before you were back on?
It might have lasted a month, and we did a couple things.
It probably lasted.
I think it lasted a month, and we did a couple things in there. EW was forced to do the show by himself a couple times because Cue Ball was late or didn't show. We did that too. We did the clock where because you at some point had presented, I think in that first show, you presented Cue Ball with the TCI championship, and then he didn't show like the next week or the week after that. So there was like a countdown clock. If he didn't show, you were going to strip the title. And so then he got stripped of the title. eventually Rock actually got the title back. I think he just came in and grabbed it. But anyway, yeah. So that lasted. That probably lasted a month. I think
Probably longer than that. Now that I'm thinking
Think
about
so?
it.
Well, that
yeah,
was-
because we did the pirate.
Oh yeah, we did
TV
the pirate
show.
thing back to them.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think you were actually on that one.
Yeah.
But so we did that too. But the problem was you were behind the scenes,
And I was building their egos too,
geeking those guys up
Yeah,
to
I was-
where they were like,
thinking they were getting 20, 25 calls better than what your show was. And
so then they did not want to return the favor and have us like take the show back
they
over.
wanted to pull Hogan.
So finally, we were just like, and there was no plans either. I think we were like in the studio, and I was just like, and I think you were just like, all right, it's time that we go take it back over. So we went back in there. I think we did the show. We finished off the show with them, and then it was back to normal at that point. And then then that might have been it. I don't know if you ever. I think you would still call eventually, but I don't know if you ever like
Maybe I did
came back on the show
one
after
or two
that.
more.
Yeah,
it was
probably.
hard because, like I said, with the meetings on Monday, I just wouldn't see it anymore. So, or at least twice in the month, I wouldn't see it. So I didn't. What was I going to say? Talk about something I didn't see.
Now, going back a little bit, one of the big controversies was I don't know if we touched on this part. If we did, let me know. But there was a bar / restaurant that was being proposed to being built right next to your house
Correct.
at the time, and so we did a couple things on the show. And it wasn't even a big deal, but there was a couple things that, and they tried to, the people that were involved in this actually tried to get you in trouble at your job.
Yeah, they went in there and
At your shoot job.
fired.
Well, that's
Yeah.
why you ran for village council.
I didn't even know anything about it. Actually, who got me involved was my neighbor Tom Albert. Said,
Yeah.
"Hey, we can fill out a slot of 4 or 3, and by that we'll have the votes to stop it." And I'm thinking, what do I know about? I can't.
Yeah, so continue about the Pelton's Point, like the
So yeah, they were going to build a bar there. So
and
that's
the
how-
bar is where your home and Tom Albert's home
Yeah.
and a couple other homes were.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
it
wanted
would
to
have been right next
buy
door
them
to
out
Yeah.
Yeah.
and change the zoning.
Well, going back, my grandmother,
yeah,
they were kind of strong arm her, and then you guys bought the house. So all this was like going on, but I remember like when you first moved there, you showed up at the first council meeting and you like called out.
Well,
whoever
what happened was when I
as a conflict of interest.
Well, that was actually Tom Albert. I didn't even know who was who. I just know that I had received documents saying that it had been approved, and I had already sold my house. I was moving, and then when I moved in, the day I moved in, they were shutting my water off. So I was trying to figure out what's going on. And when I went down there, I had these documents saying, "Well, yeah, when are they building this bar?" And they're like all looking at me like, "What bar? Nothing's been approved."
Right.
So that's when I met my neighbor Albert, and then Tom Albert, and
So
he went down to the meeting, and we kind of said something. I didn't even know anything about it really. I didn't even know anybody on the board, and that's when he kind of confronted him on it. And
So-
that's we led back to the on TV station with was it Beth Luther
yeah.
to talk about, but then she had her own agenda. I don't even know where.
so
she
the government was in cahoots shutting your water off, trying to muscle you guys out of
I don't think they were, but you have to remember anytime a developer comes in a city, or they can get tax money out, the developer always has the advantage.
Oh yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
The resident has no rights.
Right.
Right.
More or less.
Yeah.
So when that happened, that launched me to run for the board.
Right. And Tom Albert
And Tom
too.
Albert, yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys both ended up getting on there. And speaking of Tom Albert, we didn't mention this, but we kind of used him later on as the reason that we took the show back over.
Yeah, that's right.
From
I forgot about that.
and I don't know if
It
you
went
were
over
still
your
on
head.
there. Yeah. I think we like used that angle that he had gone over your head or pulled some strings or whatever, and then got us back on the show because he used to call the show quite a bit too.
Yeah. I mean, it got so bad. Like I was home on vacation. I remember on Easter break on vacation watching my kids, and the guy from he'd be calling in my work saying, yeah, his car's in front of his house, like I was, dogging it or something, home just screwing around when I was on vacation, And they actually went, in the day of my election, they actually went to my work and demanded that I be fired or something, It was just crazy. Retrospect, if I would have known really what was going on, I should have sued immediately,
Yeah.
So
You'd have had good grounds for it. But
I mean, that's
instead,
kinda what
instead you peppered them on the jobber hour.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
And then Joe posted things on there like, "Oh, sponsored by the name of the bar or whatever they were proposing."
Yeah, they got upset
And I had
about
nothing
that.
about it, and they went down there saying, I was doing all these things. I was like, I have no control over it. But I mean, think about it. Yeah, you lost to a guy who did a wrestling show. Well, you deserve to lose. So, I will not be ashamed of that. The victory to the wrestlings.
So, I mean, I think we covered like the major angles. Is there anything that I'm forgetting that happened on either one of the shows that should be mentioned?
Well, I think it was. Speaking of politics, I think there was a lot of with the job hour even on TV. Remember, they didn't put our name on the ballot to go out for the awards.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then they blackballed us there.
Yeah.
They said, there was like a box you could write their name in or something.
They did that a couple years.
Yeah, like they wanted no part of us winning a show, So I think there was a lot of. Now I'm not saying Joe, but I think there was the powers that be on that cable commission. I don't remember whether was her name Diane or whatever. I think she didn't like you guys, and that they wanted you guys off the air.
Yeah.
I mean,
It was the same as the
politics,
radio show,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
about.
same thing.
Yeah.
much.
And we minded our P's and Q's a lot more on the radio or on the television show.
They didn't have any idea that a sense of humor about anything. Like
Right.
most people, they took it something saying it was legitimate. Like it was real when it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they took it real. Their egos got involved in it.
Well, we would. Buddy Rogers would complain
Yeah.
about the award shows on there, and they took that. Literally. And at the time, I think Joe might have already been gone. But I'm sure he was there at one point when we complained. But I know later on, Dan Hemme, who took over for Joe, was kind of telling. He's like, "Listen, they're playing characters. It's a wrestling show. They're not seriously upset about it. I mean, it was
And just stop
it was
what you're
kind of
saying. Or
BS.
think about that. That they get offended by that.
Oh, I
The fact
know.
that they get to go say something to about that, and that they're offended about that, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, look where we're at now. You let those people keep doing what they're doing, and here you go.
Now you mentioned this before, and you said you haven't watched wrestling in a while. When is probably the last time that you even were still watching it?
I mean,
we barely watch it anymore.
I mean,
either,
I
but
channel
I
surf.
watch it
I
every
couldn't
once in a
tell
while.
you who's a champion. I couldn't even tell you. It was interesting because
Yeah,
you
I don't
called
know
me
either.
when you
Think
said
about
we're going to come back and talk about this. I actually was watching some old clips on Facebook and that
of regular
WCW,
wrestling or
back in our time.
okay.
And it's just truly amazing to me. I remember Buddy Rogers hated WCW, and I was a WCW. But in retrospect, I give Buddy Rogers a lot of credit on this angle. I've really come around on a lot of things. When I go back and I look at it now, everything they had, Buddy Rogers was kind of correct. They built this empire that only a monkey could have screwed up. And they did it.
Well,
And let me just name some names. Hogan, Piper, Nash, who's it? Bischoff. They wouldn't put anybody over. And it was funny because I saw a shoot, and Hogan's talking about, maybe he's talking about Piper. He's going, well, I was afraid to lose the belt to Piper because I was afraid he would never give it back to me. So I had to go do a movie, and I'd let him beat me, but I wouldn't. And I'm thinking,
well,
this guy still doesn't get it. He still doesn't get it that he destroyed that company because what is the mindset there that you won't lose a belt because you're going to do a movie? You know what I'm saying, buddy?
Yeah.
Does that make any sense in the world that you
doesn't.
would think that way? Even today, 20 years later, if the company's out of business, you're thinking that way. Like he was doing some great thing by he would put someone over, but he expected the belt back. And I'm trying to think of the match. Who was the guy that just laid down for him? Was it
it was Nash,
Nash.
No,
Or they-
it wasn't Nash. It was
Jeff Jarrett.
Jeff Jarrett.
That was like the
Oh,
dying.
That was like
Yeah.
a slap in the
dying,
face,
dying
and
game.
like Hogan
Yeah.
never got that. He I don't think to this day he ever got it.
Well, I mean, I've heard different stories. The story that I believe is that was all a setup. But during that whole thing, when they were doing cutting promos on each other, Hogan got upset because Russo called him like a old bald bastard or something like that. that was just an off the cuff thing. And that is supposedly what Hogan actually got upset about. He actually tried to sue them at the time. Yeah, it was just a mess. I mean, everybody behind the scenes were just jockeying positions for themselves. They weren't looking at the big picture, or they didn't care about the company. They only cared about their own spots on the roster, I believe.
I will say this though, go back and like Eric Bischoff has a podcast now. It's freaking great.
Okay.
He explains all this stuff. Like a lot of it,
But
our perception at the time
But don't you?
was a lot of it was accurate, but a lot of it wasn't.
Don't you think
'cause
he has a
of
lot
it
to
was
blame? Because
the TBS people behind the scenes not letting them do things.
well, I think he's a little bit of a cop out there because I think
Well, he'll
he
still
stroked their
admit when
egos.
things was bad.
He just wouldn't put anybody over. They had so much talent. They
Oh,
were
they
like
did.
the Alabama. They had like 5-star recruits everywhere.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't put anybody over.
That's true.
it's
That part of it.
It's,
Heck yeah.
it's just made no sense. Like, who? I mean, today you could have two empires of wrestling that would have. I mean, we might not ever get like back in the days where you're up there with Monday Night Football ever again because of how stupid they were.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just
And how stupid they are now.
yeah. I mean, you look back and now it's like okay, how's it's
Well,
really
as far as WCW versus WWE, in the beginning, I liked WCW because the matches were better. They were bringing in guys from all over the place. I remember like flipping back and forth. I'd be watching WCW. You'd have a match with like Chris Benoit versus Eddie Guerrero, and they were just killing it. And you'd switch it over to WWE, and they'd have like the Godwins versus the Los Barriquas or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was pre-taped until they finally, until WWE finally were like, hey, we need to compete.
Yeah,
here.
well, they were-
and then they decided to go the Jerry Springer route.
yeah. But it was even funnier to that. You just brought up a memory. It was funny. WCW would say, "Well, why flip your channel when this is what's going to happen in the match?" They'd announce who was going to win. I mean, that was never done before that I can remember.
No.
Maybe you guys would know more about that.
No,
but
no.
I remember
That was heated.
why waste your time? This is who's going to win the match.
No, it didn't,
They would
but-
announce another competitor who was going to win the match before.
Unfortunately for them, though, that's what backfired on them eventually because they had beaten WWF. I don't know how many weeks in a row at that point. And then when they announced that Mick Foley, Mankind, was going to win the belt, everybody, they say, like, if you look at the ratings, they said almost to the minute, as soon as Tony Schiavone said that, there was like millions of people switched the channel because they wanted to see that. So that actually backfired on them.
yeah.
I mean, they did it for a while, but when they actually...
Yeah, for that title switch, it did.
But people wanted to see that title switch.
But in the end, it is. I got to go with Buddy Rogers on this when I look back on it. Now with the NWO and they had Lugers, it just got ridiculous. Like
the NWO angle
the
was
whole
just
thing. Like you said, the Four Horsemen should have took them out of their misery. They should have Hogan lose every freaking match for the like 10 matches in a row, and Nash.
Yeah, I mean, you just
And
couldn't have.
Piper, and I mean, they were paying that guy a fortune to show, one pay-per-view, whatever he was getting. He was making,
Yeah,
$4
I
or
think
$5
he
million.
did like, what, 3 pay-per-views maybe or something like
3-4
that.
pay-per-views a year and do a couple shows, and he was making, $3 to $5 million
Put
a
Hogan
year.
out with the sleeper on that one.
Yeah.
I think, we watched
Yeah,
it
I
at
think
your
he
house.
did that a couple times.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
beat Hogan a couple, and that cage
But it was
match
always
one-
non-title.
Yeah, it was always non-title, and that cage match is one of the best matches ever.
And then but then later they got to bring an Ultimate Warrior for Hogan to get his victory back on him. That was like one of the worst matches of all time. That was one of the worst build-ups, one of the worst matches
Yeah.
of all time.
Yeah, I don't
but I
need-
think Warrior did get injured or something. But either way,
Yeah, and
I mean,
that-
it just
that made
wasn't
no
the
sense.
same.
The Warrior,
Hogan just wanted that victory
Yeah.
back. That was it. Like
he-
I
Well,
said,
he was
all
a
the-
big name. I could see what they're trying to do, Say, crap, here's the Ultimate Warrior.
No,
Let's
I
see if we can get
agree.
more people.
I agree. He was still a big name, but then he injured himself in that
Yeah, it
cage
just
match,
didn't come
so-
off right,
So
you
he
know?
didn't get to stay
but,
around.
but let's face it, if they would have had someone in there running that company halfway decent, that thing could be a $1 billion company now,
Yeah.
and it should be like a business 101 how to screw up a company.
Yeah, it needed
Show
to be
clips
on
of
its own and not part of the, the corporate TBS Turner.
Well, I will say this, and you might not be privy to this, but wrestling after so many years is finally going back on TNT.
I heard there's a new company.
It's
Jericho's a champion.
All Elite Wrestling, AEW. A lot of people think that they are going to compete with WWE. I'm not so sure. WWE has already kind of countered it by putting NXT, which is kind of like their rookie league. They are going to put that on USA opposite AEW now already. But a lot of people were kind of hoping that it would, and it's run by, a couple of people, but Cody Rhodes. So a lot of people are looking at it as like Dusty's revenge. Dusty is involved with WCW. This is going to be the modern day WCW. WWE has kind of gotten, into the same routine with their stuff. There's a lot of wrestlers in there that I like. We used to go to the Ring of Honor shows all the time. A lot of those guys that we saw back then are in there now. And I like the wrestling, but I just don't know. I don't think it's going to make a difference.
What do you think, buddy? I mean, do you think another organization can make it today, or does McMahon got the market? Is it over?
Well, he does. He has the market, but you just have to, like in my mind, you have to target a different audience. Kind of like I'll go back to the NWA, the territories, WCW. That was a different presentation than the WWF, right? So the problem, and I know it's going to happen because it always happens, is another group will come up and they might find a backer or whatever, and they might have a couple names and they might have some matches, but generally it's WWE Light or, another version of WWE instead of being something completely different. And I'm not talking just by name and
I would say
talking like the action, is it presented like a sport or is it presented like entertainment? If you present it like entertainment, not going to make it.
Well, they say they're going to present it like a sport, so we'll see. But I
hope so.
We're running low on time. So, Frank Williams Jr., thank you so much for coming back
with you guys
on
again.
the show. It was
It's
kind
an,
of
it's an honor to be in your guys'
days,
presence.
so.
It's an honor to be in your presence. Two wrestling geniuses.
Well, back at you. Thank you for being on here.
I wish we could talk more wrestling history, even though I was,
We'll do that another time. Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that some other time.
Well, I might need a bit more on a Piper tape. Might need a Hulk Hogan or Ventura tape.
Brace Beemer, any parting words?
Just everyone, thanks for joining tonight, listening live or recorded, whether it's on the internet, download or what have you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thanks everybody as always, and
thanks,
keep checking.
Thank you, Frank Williams Jr.
Yes, thanks, Frank Williams Jr. Keep checking the Butch Blood page for the next time we'll be on the air.
Nice job tonight, Butch.
Thank you, and take care, everyone.
Everyone's having fun, but they're dancing. And the quicksand.